Well, there's one particular theme that is being very central in all of my philosophical work since pretty much from the beginning. That is a theme from Hegel. It's not only from his thought, but it's most famous from Hegel's thought. That is the theme of recognition, mutual recognition or intersubjective recognition, and that's why that kind of caught my attention. That theme was exactly, I think, because it is so applicable in my own life, in life general, in what I experience in my life. The relationship between one's own understanding of oneself and then the perceptions of others of oneself. That's kind of the main kind of dynamics that this recognition stuff is about, and the mutuality of this interdependence of one's self-perception and perception of the world, of the perceptions of others. And I thought that was, when I kind of bumped into that topic, I thought that was incredibly insightful. There's also the kind of more personal, probably kind of national thing. Coming from a small country, relatively young country, the question is kind of in the national psyche always, what do they think of us? Do they take us seriously? Do they think we are good in this or that? It's kind of a small country obsession too. So it's not surprising someone from Finland might be interested in that topic. But definitely that is a theme that has an incredible array of applications to all kinds of different areas of life, and that's why I found it so interesting and kind of has remained with me ever since. Probably will remain for a long time. That's one of the that's maybe the main topic, kind of mainstay in my thinking from Hegel. But more broadly, Hegel is a non-dualist thinker. Hegel always thinks of the connection of things. He's never satisfied with kind of analyzing, dividing things into black and white or good and bad or yes and no, etc. He's always interested in the connections of things and the kind of interdependencies, etc., which I find again an incredibly useful way to think of social life and everything else in reality. And he's also a holistic thinker. So he emphasizes the importance of understanding everything in its relations to other things and in the broader context. And I find that those very important insights. Not only understand the individual, myself or any other individual in the social context, but understanding, say, a particular country in the context of the world system, understanding humanity or the human species in the context of nature at large, etc. Very, very important ways of seeing things that I find in Hegel.
How would you say, from the first instances of Hegel coming up with his ideas of recognition and the other thinkers with him during that time, and the current state of what we think of recognition and what most philosophers today think of recognition, how would you say it has progressed or evolved over the years?
Right. So one thing is that Hegel does not have a theory of recognition. It's not a theme that he kind of develops at any length, at any particular place in his writing. It's just something kind of pops up again and again in some crucial places in his work, and this is so has resulted in this topic kind of resurfacing in European philosophy again and again in ways that are not strictly to be found in Hegel. People have just used the general idea in different productive ways. One example is Alexander Koshev, the very important Russian French thinker and teacher, in whose lectures on Hegel's phenomenology of spirit, many, or if not most, of the immediate post-war French intellectuals sat. So they were very much influenced by his understanding of recognition. And for him, the struggle for recognition was basically the kind of engine of history. So he was thinking of human history in those terms, but also but another place, not totally disconnected, where the general theme of recognition has played a role is in broadly speaking Marxist thinking. Hegel has these famous figures of the master and slave, the struggle of recognition between the master and slave, which very easily kind of translates into think of class relations, etc. But then from the 90s, there's a more recent resurgence of thinking about recognition in the context of identity and difference. So Charles Taylor wrote this famous paper in 1992, which basically deals with recognition for ethnic minorities and what that could mean. It could mean kind of recognition in the sense of attributing equal rights, or then it could mean recognition in the sense of somehow appreciating or supporting the particular cultural identity. In this case, the French speakers in Canada, but could be equally well be a gender, particular gender group or particular ethnic group or whatever. So this kind of recognition thinking has been associated with questions of identity since the 90s, but that is only one application of the idea, so to say. So it's kind of general idea which has been utilized in many interesting and productive ways after Hegel.
Yeah, and one of the philosophers that also touches on recognition is Axel Honneth, who we learned towards the end of your social critique class. And I was kind of wondering whether you could explain to us sort of what drew you to Axel Honneth in particular and his concepts of recognition.
Yeah.
And I know you also wrote a book in response or in tandem with his ideas.
Yeah. What originally drew me to his thinking was just the fact that he published this book, The Struggle for Recognition, while I was an undergraduate student. So thanks to him, and then also this some work by Charles Taylor, that was a kind of big topic in those years, in the late 90s, etc. And he was the big name at that point. And I had some, through my teacher, some contacts to Germany, also to other German philosophers who had already earlier dealt with the topic. Ludwig Sieb is kind of grand old man in Germany of thinking about recognition the last decades, and I had, through my teacher, Jussi, connections to him and others, but then also through coincidences and connections, a connection to Axel Honneth was then kind of came up. I met him a couple of times and invited him to Jyväskylä, which is the place in Finland where I studied, and we had a workshop with him. And his work was just incredibly interesting and productive in my mind, and it still is around this topic. I mean, the basic ideas of the book Struggle for Recognition was originally in 92 in German, then the mid-90s in English. It's basically a theory of a good society. A theory of a good society, according to Honneth, is one in which people have reasonable opportunities to receive fair recognition for what they are, what they do, also for their rights, etc. And why this is important is precisely because of the effect of recognition or lack thereof to people's conceptions of themselves. So if one hasn't had the experience of being respected as an equal member of society, for instance, with equal rights with others, it's very difficult to have this kind of robust self-respect that one can kind of stand up straight among other people. Similarly, if one hasn't had the experience of one's contributions being properly acknowledged or seen as valuable or appreciated as valuable, it's not that easy to kind of see them as valuable oneself. One needs to have this kind of validation of one's value, of the worth of what one is doing from others. And if one doesn't receive adequate recognition, then it's difficult to have these positive conceptions of oneself, and that will end up having effects on how well one is able to live one's life, basically. Realize one's kind of know and have the courage to think of what I want to do in life, and the courage to push through and kind of basically live with self-confidence, self-respect, etc., among others. So there's that kind of basic idea of a good society as one which provides people recognition, therefore the psychological means for satisfying self-realization, agency, etc. But there's also a kind of political theory according to which we can look at social struggles, say the struggles for women's rights, struggles by gender minorities, etc., from this point of view of struggle for recognition. The idea there is that they are not merely kind of strategy struggles for some material or other goods, but they are precisely struggles for having a kind of adequate status in the eyes of others, being respected, being valued, etc. So I think it's a really important perspective to social movements and social struggles. So there are many fruitful ideas in that book. I myself developed the ideas in slightly different ways, but it's been one of the main influences on me, on my thinking of recognition, Michael Hornet.